Hi there! Welcome to Pallet University. Today we are talking about the second course that you visit to take photos on in New Pokemon Snap, the Founja Jungle on Belusova Island. We've already talked about the large-scale diversity of the entire game of New Pokemon Snap in this video, as well as the sort of small-scale local diversity of the park course on the first island in this video. So if you have not seen those to sort of get a feel for the structure of these videos, please go do that. The jungle is kind of in the middle of the road when it comes to its ranking among the other courses in terms of their diversity. Both the day and night version of the courses come in tied for 9th among all the courses, which kind of surprised me a bit. This area is very obviously a tropical rainforest, such as the Amazon or the Congo. You can tell that from a variety of different ways, mostly the plants that you see, but also obviously the Pokemon. Rainforests are sort of stereotypically known for all of the weird, sort of creepy, crawly, dangerous animals that you see in them, and this jungle is no exception, with things like Arbok and Ariados that most people in real life would consider dangerous or creepy. Also, leopards are really well known to live in the big jungles of Africa and Western Asia, so Liepard really fits in this course. But one of the big things that really reminded me of real-world jungles, which I spent quite a bit of time a few years ago in some jungles in Central America when I went to Belize, is all of the arthropods and amphibians present in this course in the game. For the arthropods, we see Yanmega, Ariados, Metapod, Ladian, Vivian, and Beautifly. As well as for the amphibians, there's far fewer amphibian Pokemon in general than there are, arthropod Pokemon. But this course does have quite a few amphibians, including Wooper, Quagsire, Swampert, and I guess arguably Venusaur. Personally, I really disagree that Venusaur is a frog like a lot of people do. I personally think that Venusaur is actually a type of extinct animal called a Dicynodont, which are sort of mammal cousins back before mammals even existed, around 250 million years ago. That's what Venusaur reminds me a lot of, and that's actually the very first video I ever put out on this channel. You can check that out here and why I think that, and also see what I looked like when I had hair. Either way, pretty much all of the Pokemon present in the jungle would not seem at all out of place in a real-world jungle here. Where things start to sort of confuse me is when you start looking at all of the Pokemon all together instead of in isolation. The jungle seems to have the exact opposite problem that the park did. The park had pretty much only Tangrowth for sort of large-scale predators, and that even sort of has an asterisk on it because a part of the park course mentions that Tangrowth loves fruit. So kind of an asterisk on that one. I'm not entirely sure, even though Tangrowth's Pokedex says that it's a predator. Anyway, that was the only even conceivable large predator in that course. This course, however, seems to have an overabundance of predatory Pokemon. Depending on how you count them, the jungle course has between 32 and 41% predatory Pokemon. If you include omnivorous Pokemon in that, which eat, plants and presumably other Pokemon, that number jumps up to 64% of all of the Pokemon in the course eating meat of some kind. And yeah, jungles have kind of a reputation of being pretty rough places to exist, but I could find absolutely no record of any jungle here in the real world having a predator to prey ratio even close to that. The ratio is kind of bolstered in the game by many of the predators on this course being based off of predators in the real world that are significantly smaller than they are in the game, mainly the bug-type Pokemon. The real-world counterparts to Yanmega, Ariados, and Ladian are normally much too small to be considered major predators in their ecosystem, even though all of them are carnivorous. Even ladybugs. Ladybugs are actually carnivorous. Don't know if you knew that or not, but they're actually quite vicious predators. Some other Pokemon like Quagsire and Swampert kind of throw another wrench in this because presumably they're doing most of their hunting in the water, and that wouldn't really affect sort of the rest of the land around them in terms of sort of predator-prey ratio. They sort of throw a bit of a wrench on that, but since they both do come out of water, if they found an easy meal on land, they would not probably pass it up. Most predators wouldn't if they just see an easy meal, even if it's not what they normally eat. I would expect that the potentially omnivorous Pokemon in the ecosystem, which would be Pokemon like Magikarp, Pikipek, Toucanon, Apom, and spoilers here if you haven't yet seen it in the game, but Mew, would probably adjust their diets to be more plant-based just because of how much competition there would be to actually eat other Pokemon. There are so many predators around that it would just be easier to avoid competing with them for food and just eat plants. But even if all of the omnivorous ones solely went vegetarian, the predator-to-prey ratio would still be ridiculously high. I don't really have a good scientific explanation for that, other than those are the Pokemon that the game developers decided to put in. So let's move on to the next thing. Like last episode, let's take a look at some of the Pokemon that hypothetically should be here, but that we don't see. Between the day and the night version of the course, there are 22 total Pokemon in the jungle. When you take a look at all of their evolutionary stages, there should, again, hypothetically, be 48 Pokemon on this course. And that is actually higher than the park from last episode, even though the park has a higher amount of visible diversity. There are more Pokemon that you see in the park than you see in the jungle. This might potentially make a little bit of sense just because jungles are a much more dense habitat. We've been exploring the jungles of the world for probably around 100 years or so at this point, and we're still finding new species in them every single day, or, thereabout, very, very often. So it wouldn't surprise me if they were just there and you couldn't see them. Jungles tend to be really good places to hide, especially if you're a relatively small animal/Pokemon. So it wouldn't surprise me if they were there, we just couldn't see them. But if they weren't there, that begs the question, why? Jungles are not typically known, at least from any research that I could find, for having many of the species that live there sort of move from one area to another throughout their lives. The juveniles live in one place, the adults, as they get older, the adults move to another spot in the jungle, or maybe in and out of the jungle altogether. From what I could find, that's not really a thing that happens all that often in jungles. For example, mangrove swamps sort of serve as a nursery for young fish. The adults that normally live out on the reef will come lay their eggs in the mangroves, and the young will live there until they're big enough to survive the trip out to the reef where they live as adults. To my knowledge, jungles don't have an ecosystem structure sort of like this. However, as we talked about, again, last episode, there are two evolutionary lines that have members in both the jungle and also the park. And that would be the Caterpie line and the Wurmple line. The adults might migrate out of the jungle across the ocean to the park to lay their eggs there, and then migrate back and just sort of live their normal lives, their non-reproductive lives, in the jungle. Other than that, for the non-flighted Pokemon that we don't see, such as, Slackoth, Vigoroth, Pokemon like that, there might just be like a separate part of the jungle that serves as a nursery that we're just not seeing. But who knows, maybe they'll give us some kind of DLC at some point and shed some light on that, I guess, hopefully. Make sure to let me know your thoughts on all of this down below in the comments, and while you're there, make sure to leave a thumbs up on this video if you enjoyed it, or a dislike if you didn't. And if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure you subscribe. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Pallet_U to keep up on all things Pokemon science, as well as, if you feel like this content is worthy of supporting financially, we do have a Patreon, the link to which you can find down below in the description. I think the biggest Pokemon in the jungle that we see is Venusaur, but I don't know for sure. A Venusaur-sized thank you to our current patrons, Patty Murphy, Sam McCarty, and Jameer Connolly. Your support, as always, is so immensely appreciated. And lastly, thank you so much just for watching, and as always, there's a time and place for everything.